belt on the chair that you're sitting in, I recommend buckling up. Because in 30 minutes, you will have experienced every emotion that's available to we humans. You're going to be angry, glad, maybe even feel good, probably angry. I don't even know how I feel yet. My Lady of the Lake.
With the sisters there, and I'd go to sleep at night hearing my mother and father say the rosary and praying that somebody in the family would dedicate their life to God. We were a very religious family. It's a happy family. I had a loving family, and I feel very blessed with that. But definitely there was nurture and support for if you wanted to give your life to God.
Then you went to St. Joseph's Academy. That really closed the trap. That wonderful school in Baton Rouge,
right,
with those extraordinary ladies who teach there and run it.
Smart, funny,
human,
but knew their theology. And I really developed a lot of my leadership skills at St. Joseph Academy. I was the president of the student body. Heard you saying earlier you were too when you were in...
But not at St. Joseph's.
No, not at a girls' school, although you probably would have done well. But anyway, but to write, to public speaking, a lot of the skills that I'm using now, I learned. It still is a very good school.
What's the feeling like? And I've never had this opportunity, and I can't resist asking. What's the feeling like when a young lady, a child, or a man says, I'm going to take on this religious life if it will have me? What is that feeling like, sister?
Well, you know, it's not something you receive just once. It's an ongoing kind of call. And in me, it was, I could see the sisters who taught me at the high school, and I kind of knew, I'm not just going to marry one man and have one little family. There must be a way for the arena of your love that could be wider in the human family, which is what religious life was. I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and Sisters of St. Joseph were teachers. And so when I entered the community here in New Orleans on 1200 Mirabeau Avenue, where the Mother House still is, it was a very cloistered life. First, you had a rule of silence. You didn't speak except for designated times.
Was that tough for you?
Real early. Well, you know, I'm very much an extrovert, and God knows I love to talk. And from the Prejean family, there was a lot of talking and storytelling. But it interiorized me, because when you're with silence, you either go nuts or you develop an interior life, which I guess is what I did, because I don't think I went nuts. But silence is a very important, still is a very important part. I begin every day with silence and meditation. And then, of course, you're all habited. We had like 5 pieces of cloth just on your head. We were dressed like widows of the 17th century, which our community was founded in France in 1650. And we continued to dress like widows of the 17th century until after the Vatican II. And then teaching, and I love teaching. Taught 4th grade religion to start out. One time caught it on fire on the Advent wreath right in front of my class. My veil caught on fire.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, so I had a flaming beginning as a nun, really. And so that's how we began. Then you'd get home at 4 o'clock, back to the convent, behind cloistered doors for your 4 o'clock prayers. Couldn't eat or drink in front of anybody. So there was still a residue of monasticism that was part of our life. Then when Vatican II happened, it was to update ourselves as religious, to be in the modern world. And that's why we took off the habit. It wasn't basically to be more comfortable. But while people had a lot of awe of you when you had on that habit, kids would have questions like, do nuns have ears? Do nuns eat food? You know, like, are you really human?
Well, sister, was Vatican II, you were a young lady, was Vatican II a cultural shock for you? When you suddenly realized there would be these massive changes in your very existence? What did you say? Did you say, have I gotten into the wrong? Because that wasn't the world.
I was for it. I was for all those
you
changes.
were for it.
Oh, absolutely. But see, the religious women, especially in the United States, took the call from Vatican II very seriously. We had meetings. We updated our route. We did whatever they told us to get back to the Gospels of Jesus. What were we originally founded for? And then we go back and read the originals. We're not supposed to be separated from people like this. We're supposed to be with people and ministering to the direst needs that people had. So it was like the religious women in the United States took it seriously. Our community had good leadership. And I was for every change that happened. Now, when you took off all those, we had 3.5 yards of serge around us, our habit. And when we call it the Revised Standard Version habit first, where we just updated a little bit, shortened your skirt a little bit, wore black stockings, but your legs could show a little bit, show your hair. it was a little shocking. People go, God, they have hair. You know, it's like you felt naked, but you were still very covered with cloth. And then, of course, when we moved to just civilian clothes and dressed like regular people.
What kind of feeling was that to suddenly be a civilian?
Well, it was like, partly it was good because it was like, well, look, I'm a human being. Jesus didn't dress specially. He didn't go around in a certain outfit and say, hey, I'm Jesus. And so you became one with people in a very special way. People say, how do we know you're a nun? Here in Catholic New Orleans, it upset people a lot when we took off the habit. Some people still upset. How do we know you're a nun? I said, well, just talk to me for 3 minutes and you know who I am.
I don't want to get into theology, about which I know nothing. But for you, sitting there on this day in 1996, how real is Christ for you? I mean, is it an abstract? Is it something in the air? How real is Christ?
Listen, Jesus Christ is a flame, and I mean, Jesus is so radical in what he calls us to, and I don't live up to it a lot of the time. But when you start reading the Gospels and look at who Jesus was with all the throwaways of his day, the prostitutes, the tax collectors. People sat down when he sat down at table with people, people were shocked at who he was with. Jesus had such a radical call within himself and to everyone to love everybody in the human family. It overcomes all segregation and racism and classism. It's radical stuff. And I feel the call in Jesus all the time. It's like I'll veer away from it, I come back to it. It's like this steady, constant flame, and it inspires all that I do.
Sister, you're so smooth that I have a feeling had you not gone into the religious, you would have been a Louisiana politician. I'm very suspicious.
Well, I don't know about that.
All right, so Sister, Vatican II changes, and suddenly you're in this civilian garb, and all the surge is off of you, and people could see your hair, and lo and behold, they do have ears. So what's the next big change in your life?
The next big change was our sisters started really debating the issues and who are the people in our society that we need to be among. If you look at the history of religious life in the United States, we start out very much with the immigrants when they came over and with the poor. We gradually moved ourselves up in society as immigrants moved up. And so it was the call again to get involved with poor and struggling people. And that led me, June 1st, 1981, to drive a little brown Toyota truck into the St. Thomas housing development and to work at a place called Hope House, where I still go every Monday. I'm there to stay close to the people. And I began to work at a high school dropout center, adult learning center there at Hope House. And right around the corner from where I was working was a prison coalition office. And my getting involved with death row inmates happened very casually. They get it great in the film that they've done. You know, Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins. They get it great in the film because she's doing like 5 things at one time. And this guy says, hey, sister, you want to write to this guy on death row? He could use a kind word. And I go, sure. And that's the way it happened. I thought all I was going to be doing was writing letters to somebody. I knew I was there to work among the poor. Didn't know this guy, didn't know what he had done, but I knew if he was sitting on death row in Louisiana, he was poor.
Give me first impression of Angola and death row. First time Sister Helen Prejean drives up there.
You know, of course, as a nun in New Orleans, you're used to a lot of respect and all. But boy, when you hit Angola, you read that green sign that by stepping on a prison property, you subject yourself to this body search, dog sniffing, body cavities. I stopped reading the sign. My heart was palpitating. I went, well, maybe they're going to cut me slack because I'm a nun. They know I won't be bringing drugs in here, but it's very scary. They search you down, metal detector. Then they led me into death row. I went, God, I'm going in the belly of the beast. That was the way I kept feeling. They kept clanging these iron doors behind me, saying, woman on the hall, woman on the tier.
What's death row like?
It's a set of 12 cells, back to back, no ventilation. And they're 6 feet by 8.5 feet. Everybody has a bunk and a toilet and a metal thing that comes out that serves as a kind of desk. And that's where people are confined 23 out of 24 hours a day.
Sister, is it a quiet place? Is it a place of human noise?
Well, first, there are a lot of harsh sounds in prison, clanking of metal against metal. Then, like, you have 3 TVs set up along that tier, so there's sound all the time there. Then people yelling out, people yelling from cell to cell. The only way a death row inmate can really get any privacy is to be able to get headphones and to be able to get music.
Did you ever get used, or does one ever get used to it?
You would have to talk to the people there. If you can get used to a place with that 6 feet by 8 foot, which is like a very small bathroom where you can find 23 out of 24 hours a day, in the company of people who are very serious about killing you.
That's a little detail.
Well, and it's like it's predominant is emotion. I've been with 3 people who've been executed. Is on the one hand boredom, because nothing ever changes from day to day. Same walls, same bars. And unless somebody comes to see you, and plenty of people don't get visitors, there's nothing to change your life.
So at what point does, it's an astonishing story, first of all. At what point does Helen Prejean of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, say this terrible place, these sad and wretched people, death in the air, I accept this as my life? Because in a way, it's kind of condemning oneself to that existence.
Well, it's like, you meet real people. There's life on the other end of this. These are real people. These are not abstractions who give you life as well as you giving life to them, and it's that gospel of Jesus again. It's like once you go, we all have monster images of people on death row. They've killed, they're going to kill again. And then you meet. I met this first man, Patrick Sonia. I went, my God, he's a human being. He had combed his hair. He was so glad to see me. I was nervous. We had a 2-hour visit. I said, what am I going to say to this man? And he talked like for 2 hours. He was so glad to have somebody. About his childhood, about driving an 18-wheeler, about how his mama cooked venison. It was like you have a conversation with, like you and I are having right now.
Were you with him when he died?
Yeah, I watched him die.
You did?
I did.
Did you have a last conversation with him?
Many. I mean, I was with him in the death house for 3 days before he died.
What's that experience like?
Unbelievable. It's, on the one hand, when you're in the death house, the tiles all polished, people following the protocol, coffee pot percolating, secretary typing papers, and I kept feeling like I was in a hospital because you felt like the end result of this is not they're going to kill this guy. This guy, fully alive, he doesn't have a disease, he's not fading, he's got all his faculties. And then you click off the hours with your mind, you know that at midnight that they're going to kill him.
Would you have preferred not witnessing his execution? This was your first.
Of course, I would prefer not watching anybody be killed in front of my eyes. But when you're with somebody, and he tried to spare, he said, no, sister, don't watch. He said, you just walk with me up to the end and I'll go in by myself because it could scar you. But I just said to him, there's no way you're going to die alone. You look at me. I'll be the face of Christ for you. You look at me. And he did. And, there was a strength there.
Was he frightened at the end?
Of course. I was scared out of my mind, too. There's a scene in the movie where Susan Sarandon goes in that bathroom. This is straight out of the real stuff. And she puts her head against that tile wall and says, Jesus, please help me. Don't let him fall apart. Because if he falls apart, I do, too. And that was the way. But there was a strength in him. He just kept saying, Jesus, please hold up my legs. Because he didn't want to faint or have to be dragged. It was the last bit of dignity.
Sister, how did, he was your first.
Right. And then I never was going to go back there anymore.
I see.
But here was this lawyer, Millard Farmer, who had 2 clients in Louisiana. He gave me about 6 months to heal. And then he came to see me. And he said, sister, we got these 2 guys in Louisiana, our clients. They got nobody. Can you be with them? And I looked at him, and I knew he wasn't sparing himself. He was going back into the fire. And I knew I was just trying to protect myself. I said, yeah, okay, Millard, I will, but I'll take them one at a time. So the second was Robert Lee Willie, who was executed in December of '84. And then Willie Celestine, he was executed in the summer of '87. That summer we killed 8 people in 8.5 weeks here in Louisiana.
Your patients, your clients, your friends, whatever you refer to them as, they're really lost. It's not like there's going to be a bugle blowing and the cavalry coming in and saving them. And you must be aware of that. Hope is what keeps us all going. And remove that element, and you, in fact, become hope for them. And that's some burden to take
Well,
on.
and love, love when there is no hope,
yes.
of which I think is what the gospel is all about. That every human being has worth and value, and that we're all worth more than the worst thing we've ever done in our life. Jesus just never allowed that some people are disposable human waste, and it's okay for the rest of you to kill them. I don't accept that.
Sister, how did you come to write the remarkable book, Dead Man Walking?
Well, I didn't think I was, I'm a storyteller. I'm from Louisiana.
I can
you
tell.
sit around, a lot of these media people now ask me, how did you come to write like that? I said, well, first, when you're from Louisiana, first you're a storyteller. You can't sit down and eat crawfish for 3 hours without talking, right? And then I began to write what I had experienced. After I'd been with the third person executor, I just started writing it up. And then somebody got me a really good agent in New York, Watkins Loomis. And they said, you got to write this book. So I started writing a book, and she got me Random House. Jason Epstein was one.
Yeah.
I mean,
The best
Jason
editor.
Epstein, though, he'd never been within 400 yards of a nun. This
Best
Jewish guy.
editor, best publisher.
And I went in a cave for 2 years, and I wrote the book. And I tried to write the words. It's like praying. You got to only write what's very truthful and what's honest. And I did it in present tense. First person, like, come along with me. Just like you said, fasten your seatbelt kind of thing.
Show them the book while we're talking about it.
And let me take you with me on this journey. So now, of course, the book's been reissued since the movie has come out.
And then how about the movie? How does a young woman from Baton Rouge feel about seeing people like Susan Sarandon playing them? You understand, you've experienced things in the death house and out of the death house that the rest of us will never know in our lives. What's that sensation like to see yourself?
Well, the great thing about the movie is here I am watching Susan Sarandon on the set, and she identifies herself as, I'm Sister Helen Prejean. But you know what happens to you? What happened to me is she became a window more than a mirror. Because I got sucked back into those original scenes watching that movie. Not so much saying, oh, Susan Sarandon's playing me, but there with the victims' families, there with the heartache and the pain.
Was that true for you?
Yes, indeed. Oh, yes. The movie brings you there. The movie doesn't preach at you. It's not this big argument against the death penalty, but it brings you there, puts a face on this whole thing. And I feel she just did a great job. Now, she was a nun for the first time, so she didn't have a lot of makeup, and she called it a bad haircut. I call it a low-maintenance haircut. And I heard that when she saw the first screening that she cried. It was costly for her to do.
Did you weep?
Oh, God, I was in a pool. There's a heart of the film where she confronts him, this character, Matthew Poncelet, with his own responsibility, and she sings to him. I was in a pool of tears when they did like seven takes of that, and I cried and
Now,
cried.
sister, I've got to ask you this very difficult question, which I dread asking. John Doe murders an innocent person, someone who had a life to live, a family perhaps, wanted to live a life, and John Doe murders him. Why shouldn't we, society, and please, I love you so much, and I hate to ask these kind of questions. I'm a softie, as you can tell. Why should we not put John Doe in that electric chair and send him to his just reward?
Because it involves, like, Major Felton Cootie and Sergeant Bourgeois, and it involves other people in killing him. That's the rhetoric is, and the rage we feel over the death of innocent people is he deserves to die. But the other side of the moral question of the death penalty is who deserves to kill him? And you know what it boils down to? 12 people in the middle of the night hired by the state of Louisiana that are going to send him to his just reward and kill him. And I tell their stories in this book, and it's in the film somewhat too, that they got to take a man, lead him from this cell, strap him onto the chair or the gurney, and kill him. And we become involved in the very killing that we say we can't have in society. That's why we can't do it.
Sister, what would you do with this John Doe if he commits this heinous crime? You agree society has to extract something.
Well, sure. No, and society's got to
be
protect
protected,
itself.
yeah.
Okay, and this is one of the things people learn in the book, but what a lot of people don't, one of the things that fuels the death penalty is they say, if we don't execute him, they're going to be out of prison in a few years, they're going to kill again. Not anymore, not for first-degree murder. The state of Louisiana and legislatures all across this country have really tightened up sentencing for first-degree murder. Either it's life without parole, as it really is here in Louisiana, or it's mandatory long-term, 35, 40 years, before you can even be considered for parole. So what the state does and what we do to protect ourselves from people who have done the most violent, the most terrible thing, is long-term imprisonment, either real life without parole or mandatory long-term imprisonment before they can be considered for parole. That's what we do. We incapacitate people who are violent, okay? We don't imitate the violence by showing that we can kill just like they can.
Tell me about Helen Prejean's future. The past has been, dare I use the word, bloody, because you have been from the cloistered world of silence and prayer into the violence of lethal injection and death row and the cries of people preparing to die like animals who know that they're going to die. What else is next on your particular menu?
Well, it's not like I'm going out looking for variety. My little boat is on a current here, and it is to stand up for the poor and the oppressed and to bring the gospel there, and to help people to see that everybody in the human family, people in St. Thomas, people on death row, people in prison, we're all one human family. And so we got what's good for all of us is what's good for some of us is good for all of us, and it's justice, and it's linking the gospel of Jesus and faith to social transformation in a just society. That's the thread of mine. That's the passion of my life. What
do you say to the family of victims? You must meet with them also.
Yeah, sure. And I understand. I mean, I have to say, I haven't had anybody. I haven't had Louis, my brother, or Marianne, my sister, or my mom or my daddy killed. I know I would feel that rage. Who couldn't feel that if somebody killed my mom or my loved ones? And I understand their rage, and I try to walk with them in that, okay? But it's like I've also watched, Louisiana allows victims' families to sit on the front row to witness
I did not know that.
Yep.
We know
That's
so
what
little.
they give them.
Yeah.
Well, then there are only a few victims' families who get that because it's very selective as to who gets the death penalty. But it's like you could watch then another mother's child be killed, and there'll be another funeral. How can it possibly give you back the universe that you lost? We now have 3 deaths or 2 deaths and another funeral. But victims' families need a lot of support and help. The thing that shocked me the most when I went to Parents of Murdered Children meetings was they're abandoned. People leave them alone because they don't know how to deal with their pain. I did that myself. I mean, I tell about that in this book, and the movie shows me making that mistake of staying away from them because I didn't know what to do or say. And they need people to reach out to them. They need support groups where they can tell the story of their grief and their loss and all the bloody details until finally they can let it go. They need community. I'd love to see every church parish involved, not just with visiting the prisoners, but reaching out to murder victims' families as well. I always envision that the cross has 2 arms and that Jesus would be on both sides of that cross.
Sister, are there any other nuns who will carry on your work or?
Oh, look, there are nuns all over the United States doing this. There's this wonderful person, Sister Miriam Wilson in Chicago. Nuns are making their way more and more to where the deepest wounds of society are that are calling for redress and healing. That's where sisters are.
It seems to me that you have taken on the saddest and mightiest of all burdens, because death is such an abstract for all of us. We dread it, we avoid it, we'd rather not even talk about it. And you knowingly plunge your life, and you're a sensitive woman, you plunge your life into that sad abyss. It's really quite extraordinary.
There's life in death. There's resurrection in death. It's not like it's all a downer for me because I get life. You meet people, the words of the gospel, and the last will be first. Those are the words I thought of when I accompanied Pat Saunier to that first execution. That there's value in people and dignity and transcendence. And so I partake of that. It's not like I'm just going and lavishing my love on people who soak it up like a blotter. You get something back. And you also have a passion in your life, because my eyes have seen and my ears have heard and my hands have touched the reality of the death penalty in this country. And so I also have a mission to tell people about it and to bring them there, which the book does and the film does, so that people can be decent
I
people.
hope no one thinks that Sister Prejean is a dreamer. She is a very practical lady who has looked into the abyss and has not turned away. Sister, it's been a great honor to be with you. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This important program series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of a state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for 60 years.